My name's Julie and I am an occupational therapist. I work in pediatrics. I currently work in an outpatient rehabilitation hospital in the clinic, the pediatric clinic. There are 8 sensory systems. There are kind of 5 systems that we call our FAR systems. They come from like outside of our body, and those are the 5 sensory systems that we grow up kind of thinking about. So touch or tactile is a big one, especially because when there are challenges with it, it's really obvious to the adults in kids' life. So I'll touch on that. There's also smell and taste and hearing and seeing. So those are the 5 FAR systems, and then there are 3 kind of near systems that are pretty jargony, but those are vestibular, which is the processing of our head movement in space and how the fluid within our inner ears kind of affects our movement and our balance. And there's proprioceptive, which is input to our muscles, joints, and tendons. And then there's interoception, which is kind of like our body systems, like, am I hungry? Do I need to go to the bathroom? I will focus on the tactile system. So the tactile system is one of 8 of our sensory systems, and we all kind of lay on a spectrum of whether we are kind of oversensitive, undersensitive, or comfortable with tactile or touch input. And the confusing thing, I think, out of all of this, actually, if I haven't confused you yet, is that we can be both over and undersensitive to any one of those types of input. So you might have a child that seems like they seek and they really need a lot of tactile input, but at other times they might be like, oh, that's aversive to me. So it can be pretty mixed, which can be a little bit harder to understand as a parent or a teacher, but just knowing that it can be mixed, I think, is helpful. For example, if there's a child who has a low threshold and a lot of sensitivity to different types of input, so let's pretend that child either avoids the input or has what looks like kind of a very strong, or some people would say overreaction to that input, what I try to tell parents is that I want the parent to try to imagine the last time they really felt sick. So they had the flu, let's say. So I say, what happens when someone turns on the TV kind of loud when you don't feel well? Or someone turns on bright lights or you go outside when you have a migraine. And most of the time, people can understand, wow, like that's so uncomfortable. I would do anything to avoid it. And I said, well, that is sometimes how your child might be feeling similarly when they have that strong reaction. And usually kind of being able to have a sense of how that feels builds empathy, and building empathy is the first thing in terms of trying to understand, oh, I could react differently, and realize, oh, my child's not making a mistake or doing anything bad or having bad behavior. And you can go the other direction. So a child that might be seeking a lot of input or having, a poor body awareness and bumping into things, kind of seeking more tactile and proprioceptive input, so crashing and bumping, and they might be getting in trouble because that's not what they're supposed to be doing at the time, is really teaching the parents. So really helping them understand that the way their body is and the way that they're processing things means that when they're sitting near you visually or tactilely, if they don't feel you against them, they don't feel their body upright, and they feel like they might just fall, and that's scary for them. Giving them, as much as possible, more control over their environment will help them interact with their environment. And so that increased sense of control can come in different ways. It can be, well, let's decorate your room together. What kind of pillow would feel most comfortable for you? It takes some creativity depending on the situation. For parents whose kids kind of seek increased tactile input or increased any type of input, what I always say is, let's try a bunch of things, let's observe a lot and see what they seek, and then let's give them as much of that type of input that they need, as long as it's socially acceptable for them and for their family. So that could mean wearing kind of a leotard under their clothes. It could mean having a little sticky tape under their table of like the hook of Velcro so they can just feel it as they're sitting at the table. And this is all, again, kind of goes along with working with a pediatric occupational therapist, depending on the child. But For those kids that seek input, I want to give them as much as I can, as much as they need throughout their day, and that can be called a sensory diet, a diet of activities, so that they can get that information, process it, and respond more comfortably to their environment. So the kids that are have some more sensory needs, I think that parents could consider changing their seating. So either offering them kind of a wiggle cushion or a therapy ball that's supported or a T-stool so that they kind of get some movement while they're sitting can be really good. And I also think setting up what's around them as much as possible with less visual distractions can be helpful. And also the idea of seating, like they don't need to be just sitting upright at the table. If they're laying on their stomach, propping themselves on their forearm, that's an amazing position for their shoulders and their back and their eyes if they can hold that position for a while. So just having the opportunity to change positions a lot. Some people will even try to make it like a standing desk for their child. So it just depends on their age. Or some people might put a stationary bike near their table so their kids can kind of bike while they're watching. There's a lot of really different creative ideas out there. I think it depends always on resources, but also on your child. I think the main misconception or mistake is that they think it's intentional and that it's kind of behavioral. If I'm going to be honest, it overlaps. So like having some sensory issues and having certain behaviors can overlap because over time, a child might use coping skills that, though not actually beneficial to them, maybe get them extra attention or maybe get attention off of them when they don't want attention, right? But in general, when kids have super strong aversive sensory reactions or the kind of opposite where they seem to just be seeking different types of tactile and sensory input, it's not meant to be behavioral. It's neurological and it's outside of their control. And for many of them, it will mature as they mature. And for some of them, maybe they can benefit from some occupational therapy. For kids that have sensitivity to touch, or for kids that have a high threshold and seek a lot of touch input, the pool can be a very comfortable place for them because the water surrounds them evenly, right? They don't have clothes on them that might tickle them as it rubs up and down their arm. Once they're immersed in the water, it is comfortably even around their body. And also being in the water and moving against water, not against gravity and air, but moving through water, provides a different sensory input called proprioceptive input. That's the input to the muscles, joints, and tendons. And proprioceptive input can be very calming to our neurological sensory system or alerting, depending on what our body needs. It's the only input that can kind of even us out depending on what we need. So that's why the pool can be so amazing for kids, whether they're tactily sensitive or they seek tactile input.